is Executive Director, and I'm very pleased to have you here with us today. It's nice to have a good crowd joining us. We're going to be starting momentarily, but I'd just like to remind you of a few housekeeping items before we actually get the program underway. If you would use the chat box for any questions or communications during the webinar today, that will really help us meet your needs. Our COSA staff will be here to monitor the chat box if you have any technical issues or if you have any questions, so be sure and use the chat box. Also, if you haven't taken the opportunity to sign in via the chat box to let us know that you're here, your name, where you're from, we would really appreciate it if you would do that as well. And we'll be using the chat box for the question and comment period with our speakers after the presentation ends. And now, since it's just a little bit after the top of the hour, we'll begin with our webinar program. I'd like to introduce you today to our moderator. It's Maryland State Archivist and COSA President Tim Baker. He's going to moderate our COSA What's on Tap for 2018 webinar today. Tim, thank you so much for everything that you do for COSA as COSA President on behalf of all of us, and thank you for being our moderator today.
Well, thank you, Barbara. I just am delighted to be here with you all this afternoon. Again, I'm Tim Baker. I'm with the Maryland State Archives, and I am the current COSA President. I'm also joined by many of my colleagues here, Jim Corden from Indiana, and he is the co-chair of our Advocacy Committee, co-chairs that committee with Jody Foley from Montana. Also, John Dugan will be presenting on our task force regarding the NHPRC. John is from Missouri. Lizette Pelletier will be presenting on development activities. She's from the state of Connecticut. Shelley Thompson from South Dakota will be talking about our education and training programs. Lisa Spear from Arkansas will be giving a presentation on our awards program. And we'll also have Veronica Martzel and Sarah Kuntz, our two great co-chairs of our SERI committee. So thank you again for joining us. If we can have the next slide. I'd like to welcome everybody again and just say that I think it's going to be a great year for COSA and for those who will be following us. I think you'll find that we have on tap a whole lot of interesting and exciting things that we're going to be working on this year. So let's go ahead to the next slide. 2018, I think, will be a very busy year for us. So we're looking forward to a great program with our joint SAA-NAGARA meeting in Washington later on this year. We're going to be doing some very exciting things in partnership with them at our joint meeting and with some other allied organizations. We have some interesting things that we're planning with NARA and the Library of Congress. So it'll be, I hope everybody's looking forward to that great event. We also have a new office. I would say we also have a new executive director. Welcome to Barbara Teague. This is her first webinar as our new executive director. We're delighted to have her. So we've moved our office to the great state of Kentucky, and I'm sure you can find our new mailing address on our web page, but please make a note of that telephone change and the new mailing address. Once again, I'd like to thank Ann for her just exemplary work for the last 5 years as our executive director, and I'm just very delighted that she has agreed to stay on with us and continue work with us, principally as our communications coordinator, and she'll be helping us with some of our writing up some of our reports and programmatic documents. So thank you to Ann for agreeing to stick with us for a while. I'd also like to thank Becky Jolson for continuing as our IT coordinator. These events, things just don't always come off without a hitch, without the help and support of people like Becky. So thank you, Becky. Anything at all you want to talk about? Barbara Teague is always there for us and for you, so I invite you to stay in touch with her. And with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Jim Corridon to talk about our advocacy endeavors.
Thanks, Tim. And welcome everybody to the first call this year. I want to bring you up to speed on a couple of different things that we have planned for advocacy over the course of 2018. Probably the most significant, and it's a brand new program, and COSA is in the forefront of this, is efforts to do a cooperative event between COSA, NAGARA, RAC, and SAA, RAC being the regional organizations like MAC and MARAC and such. And basically what we're going to be doing is we are going to be having a group of about 75 or so archivists who will be at the annual meeting this summer in Washington, going to Capitol Hill and meeting with congressional staff and senatorial staff and asking them to support a couple of different issues. Some of them are listed here. The main topic that all of the organizations we focused on is federal funding for archives, and the special task force that's working on putting together this Archives on the Hill event is going to be fleshing out what exactly that means and sending stuff back to the boards of those organizations for approval, so that we have a unified message. Other issues that are coming up are net neutrality, intellectual property, electronic records preservation, government archives. Some of those are government archives issues. And so as it shows you here, we'll be doing one-page topic descriptions. We will already have Hill appointments set up so that we match people up based on where they live. So if you're from California, it's likely you'll be meeting with people from the California delegation that are either on the oversight committee related to archival issues or the appropriations committee, so that we can deal with some of these funding things. And we hope to make this a regular event so that we can continue to build some broad grassroots across the country, but also make sure that Washington, D.C. and Congress understand that there really are archivists across the United States and in their home districts that are looking for funding. So there's going to be training and other things going on, as it says on here, but the gist of this is that COSA is kind of in the lead because COSA has traditionally been the most active with advocacy efforts and actually doing in-person congressional meetings. So that's a big whole event that we're working to try and get launched this summer. So I hope you'll all help us participate, and we'll probably be calling on many of you to be part of this program. Becky, you want to go to the next slide? Two other things that we're working on in the Advocacy Committee for COSA. One is replevin, and so there's a small subcommittee that's been formed that includes Jelaine Chubb from Texas, Jody Foley from Montana, and retired archivist Melanie Sturgeon from Arizona. And they are working on trying to come up with some guidance, and we've been facing some challenges about replevin issues. And one of the primary things is one thing that's come up is that it's very difficult now for us to get into eBay and raise objections to documents that are being put online. And so we're working on trying to see if there's a quick way for that to happen so that things are polled or questioned before they're actually sold. They're also going to be working on rewriting COSA's guidelines for input and looking at the documents we already have in place related to replevin to see if we can get to a point where we make some progress again in that area. And then the third significant thing is, as always, NHPRC's budget. As an update, the NHPRC budget remains in limbo for 2018. The Office of Management and Budget has put a hold on any spending for new grants until we move from a continuing resolution to an actually approved budget, or there's a continuing resolution that runs through the end of the fiscal year for the federal government, which would be September 30th. And if any of you have watched the news, I'm sure it's impossible to miss this, but Washington continues to pass, a couple weeks, a month, a 6-week continuing resolutions. So until there's a permanent resolution to this year's budget it's highly unlikely that OMB will be releasing the ability for NHPRC to spend grant funds. So the Advocacy Committee continues to track this. We're watching for movement here, and we have been reaching out to people in Washington to try and get a sense of where this is going. So, and I think at the end, if there's questions, I think Tim's going to coordinate those, so feel free to ask them at that point. And I think it's my privilege to introduce John Dugan, President-elect of COSA, and also he in his role as chair of the NHPRC task force. So, John? John, if you're there, we can't hear you.
Becky, is he unmuted?
The system is not letting me unmute him now, although it was
okay.
earlier. John, if you can try unmuting yourself again.
We apologize for this. I will go over just a few of the things until we get John straightened out. As many of you recall, we had a state board symposium meeting with NHPRC staff at our annual meeting in Boise in July to examine some of the processes and programs of SRAVs and NHPRC and COSA relationships. And what happened after the state board symposium, there were a few things that we were going to do. There were quick communication issues that NHPRC could tackle, so that we felt if we could improve our communications, that would help find out more about what's going on with NHPRC and have more information come out to the states from the NHPRC. We're also working on continuing the conversation with NARA and with NHPRC. John, who is muted, chaired a task force for COSA to look at our relationship both with NARA and with NHPRC and the relationship among the state archives, the state boards, and the state board members. We wanted to give a sort of an overview analysis of what was working, what wasn't working, what we could improve. And we sent a report to NARA and NHPRC from the task force, and we're going to be following up at the meeting with the Archivist of the United States and the new executive director of the NHPRC after that person is hired. As many of you recall, Kathleen Williams left NHPRC last year to go work at the National Gallery of Art. So they have been doing an executive search for her replacement. And after that person is replaced, we will be meeting with the NARA staff and NHPRC executive director. And anyone else who is on the task force want to add anything since we can't get John unmuted? Okay, thank you. We'll go to the next slide. And I'll introduce Lizette Pelletier from Connecticut, who's the chair of our development committee.
All right, thank you very much, Barbara. I'd just like to report that we had a very good membership year in 2017. All but 6 states or territories contributed dues this year, so that allowed us to exceed our budget by 5.4%. We're hoping to get 100% of members to contribute even a small amount towards dues in 2018. But just remember, no matter what you donate, it does help to support COSA's activities on behalf of the state archives. So dues are very important. We had 2 appeals in 2017, and again, we were able to exceed our budgeted amount, which was really great. We had one over the summer and one at the end of the year, and the goal for each was $3,000. So thank you very much to both our corporate and individual donors for their generous support this past year. Our summer appeal raised just over our targeted amount, and the end of the year appeal was well over our goal by $2,000. As part of that end-of-year appeal, we established a new fund for emergency response, which raised $2,650. We added this new fund at the end of the year after Lori Foley of Heritage Emergency National Task Force approached COSA about providing a donation of either money or supplies to Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria. The board approved a $1,000 donation and the creation of the fund so that members could contribute to the fund through the annual appeals. This is going to be a permanent fund, so you can contribute throughout the year on an ongoing basis to this. We've already put some of the money to use. Recovery supplies are being sent to, or on their way to Puerto Rico at the moment. Ann Ackerson was able to get Gaylord Archival to match the cost of the supplies as well as cover the shipping costs, and they are coordinating with FEMA to get the supplies to the island and to those who need it. Apparently they've run into a few bureaucratic roadblocks as part of this process, but they will get there. And we are waiting to hear what is needed for the Virgin Islands, and we'll be sending some support there as well. If you are interested in donating to the emergency fund or the Welch Leadership Fund, or simply just making a donation once you get your 2017 income tax refund, you can make a donation on the COSA website. You don't have to wait for us to send out the letters. Just click on the shop tab at the top of the page, scroll down past all the cool COSA merchandise that's on sale there to the bottom, and you'll see where you can make your donation. For 2017, we had 7 sponsors contributing to us. They were Ancestry, Family Search, Apex Software, Preservica, Space Saver, Gaylord, and LibNova. Our 2 newest sponsors are Space Saver and LibNova, and we welcome them on board, and we look forward to a productive relationship. The committee is working to develop more corporate sponsors and partnerships to sustain us through the coming years, and we're also working on developing sponsorship levels for both corporate and individual donors, and we will be providing more information about this during the coming year. So we're looking forward to a great 2018 on the Development Committee. So now I'm going to pass it on to Shelley Sandstrom and on the education and training.
Thank you. We're going to talk a little bit about all the activities that are going on with education and training. As you know, COSA holds monthly webinars from January through October with a different theme each year. And this year the theme is on leadership and management. We're still going to have the SRAB town halls and the annual meeting wrap-ups as well, but we have this track on leadership and management that we think is going to be a really useful. Next month, the webinar is the SRAB Town Hall on the 22nd of February. And the attendance, as you can see, in 2017, we had 460 regular attendance for the regular COSA monthly webinars. The SERI webinar was at 895, so these are really popular options that are available for our members. So continue to take advantage of these. The lineup for the webinars is available on the website under the Programs tab. So you can go out there and check that out and see what's coming up and get those marked on your calendar. The COSA On Demand feature was new last year, and we encourage state archivists to remember that. And that's a feature, it's a phone call that state archivists can arrange with their colleagues on a, maybe on a burning topic, a hot topic that we need to talk about. So we just need to get a hold of Barbara and get that phone call set up if that's something that you're interested in, so that the state archivist can take advantage of that. New this year are the Shop Talk webinars. These are webinars that will feature our COSA's large corporate sponsors, and that will allow them time to showcase their work and will keep us informed on their work. So stay tuned, more on that as we get those webinars scheduled. The white paper, Attracting and Retaining Great Talent, we finished that up and wrapped that up in November, December. I believe it was sent out in an email. It's also available on the website under the, I believe it's under the Research tab. And the paper discusses challenges facing the state archives or state archives government archives in attracting and retaining staff. It's got some good follow-up points, so please take a look at that and forward that around as necessary so we can get the word out about that. The mentoring program for new state archivists is available, obviously, to new state archivists. There was quite a few this last year, and we believe we got everyone who was interested in that paired up with a mentor and a mentee. And there's quite a few that were taking advantage of that opportunity. So there again, also please let Barbara know if you're willing to participate in that. Let's see, and the final thing to bring up is the news brief. Previously this was coming out quarterly, and now it's going to be coming out monthly. It's meant to keep the membership informed on activities, and we just have so much that's going on that we have a lot to share that we're going to start sending that out monthly. The past issues of the news brief are available on the website as well under, I believe it's under Connect. So when you get those in your email, make sure you take a minute and open up those emails and keep informed with what's going on. And I'm going to pass on to Lisa.
Thank you, Shelley. Can everyone hear me? Awesome. Well, good afternoon, everyone. I think we all recognize the valuable service that state and territorial archives provide through preserving and providing access to government records and historical documents, as well as all the other numerous functions that fall within our various spheres of influence. We work with K through 12 students and teachers in accessing and utilizing our documents in the classrooms. Our SHRABs assist local government agencies, historical societies, and college and university archives in the preservation of their records. We create exhibits to entertain and educate the general public. We organize programming to inform about history and the importance of archives. And I could go on, but I only have 5 minutes on the agenda. So obviously there's a lot of great work going on in our respective states. And the awards program is an important way to recognize the work of individuals and agencies who have contributed to those efforts and who continue to contribute to strengthening our state and territorial archives. COSA offers 6 awards each year, 5 with May the 1st nomination deadlines and 1 with a November the 1st deadline. And the work of promoting the awards program falls to the awards committee, which this year consists of myself, Sean Rounds of Minnesota, Shelley Thompson, who you just heard from, and Emeritus Utah State Archivist and COSA past President Patricia Smith-Mansfield. And we are very ably assisted by Barbara Teague and Ann Ackerson. Some of you may have noticed that the awards committee tried a different strategy last fall when we solicited nominations for the COSA Ancestry Leadership Award by contacting COSA members individually to encourage them to submit nominations, along with doing our normal listserv postings. That effort paid off. We garnered a record 7 nominations, and we hope that that trend will continue in 2018 when the Leadership Award comes around again in November. So the 5 awards for which we'll be soliciting nominations in the next few months are the Victoria Irons Walsh Leadership Award, which recognizes sustained leadership and outstanding contributions of an individual or institution to the development of state and territorial archives. The Walsh Travel Stipend, which provides up to $1,000 for an emerging leader in state and territorial archives to attend the annual meeting. The Advocacy for Archives Award, which acknowledges an individual or organization that has made a significant contribution to efforts by state and local government archives to ensure the preservation and availability of the American historical record. Last year's recipient was the Library of Virginia. The Rising Stars Award, which acknowledges outstanding contributions by individual staff members or teams to their state's archives and constituencies, and the COSA-NHPRC SHRAB Award of Merit, which is presented to a SHRAB for a project or program that resulted in strengthening the condition or access of documents and records within the state. So this is just an overview of the grants, or the awards, rather, and there's additional criteria for each of them, and you can find the criteria and the application guidelines and the forms for those on the COSA website under the Programs tab. The awardees will be recognized at the 2018 annual meeting in D.C., and the recipients of the COSA Ancestry Leadership Award from 2017, the ones that were selected in 2017, will present their projects at our work session at the annual meeting. So the awards committee will be reaching out to the membership about the upcoming award deadlines, and you'll be seeing updates on the COSA listserv over the coming months. So please be thinking about individuals and organizations that are doing things that merit recognition. We are all doing noteworthy things, and we want to see your nominations. So I am going to hand things off to Veronica and Sarah to talk about what is going on with SERI.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. On behalf of the SERI Steering Committee and all the hardworking subcommittees, I'm going to give an update today on the SERI activities. This is Sarah Kuntz from North Carolina, and I don't believe Veronica could join us today. She had a conflict with a meeting scheduled, a records management meeting, so I will fly solo today. But first, let me start off by saying, before I give any updates, thank you to all of the people who are actively involved in the SERI work. SERI is a flagship program of COSA, and there's a lot of activities going on within that program and within the subcommittees, and it really is a group effort. And I commend all of the people working on it, and I thank the state archivists who have staff working on the various subcommittees. They're doing a great job and doing a lot of hard work on behalf of our association and really for all of our programs. So what's been going on in the last year with SERI? Well, we wrapped up a multi-year grant that you probably know as the Education Grant. Its formal title was the Strategic Training and Education Program. That was a multi-year grant from IMLS, and you will know it by the activities that were surrounding it, including many webinars, in-person meetings, the Beginning and the Advanced Institutes, and all the resources that went along with that grant. So we were very pleased at the successful results and productivity that went on within that grant. And that seemed like a good time as that grant was wrapping up to take a broad view of what's gone on with SERI, take the temperature of where we've come, what have we accomplished, what are some remaining challenges, and really look at the state of electronic records management and preservation within our community. And that turned into a very long report written by Barbara called The National Risk, the State of State Electronic Records. And there's also an executive summary that goes along with it if you want to just kind of get the highlight. But that is a really important document, and I suggest that you take the time to read it. It's got a great overview of where we've come and what we've accomplished and where we're looking to go with SERI. And also along with that report, we developed a little one-page infographic, and that's a nice little way to summarize some of the statistics and talk about growth in electronic records and funding associated with that. So it's a nice thing that you might use in an advocacy effort to talk about the need for resources to match the challenges going on with electronic records management. So as that grant was wrapping up, we kicked off a new IMLS grant, and that one is called Implementing Access. It started October 1st. It's a little bit over $200,000 in this grant, and we're pleased to welcome our grant consultant, Michelle Gallinger, to the team on this one. So the goal of the Implementing Access grant is to reach out and collaborate with our key stakeholders. Those would include groups like the National Governors Association, National Association of State CIOs, National Association of Secretaries of State, and some other big heavy hitters where you have associations that also deal in some way with records management and preservation or the tools that come along with those activities. And we're going to work with those stakeholders to address some of their needs and some of our needs, probably in the forms of publications and other outreach activities. So we're hoping that will kind of simultaneously solidify our relationships with those groups groups and also give us some really good resources to get us talking about the shared challenges with electronic records management and preservation. Next slide. Okay, so now let's talk a little bit more specifically about each of the subcommittees. There are 3 subcommittees working within the SERI structure. The Tools and Resources Group is chaired by Alan Ramsey and Nick Canizio, and they are hard at work right now on implementing some of the work with the Access Grant. So the last bullet on their list there is they're working on some of these documents to support this outreach activities with the Access Grant. They're also working on some various topics around tools and resources such as blockchain and how we can get up to speed on the implementation of that in our world. And I also would commend to you their publication that they put out recently about best practices in digitization projects. A great resource. I was very pleased. Not only did I enjoy reading it, but I enjoyed the fact that several people within state government in North Carolina recommended it back to me. So it really made its way out into the world, and I suggest that that's a great tool that you could use with your stakeholders within your state. So take a look at that document, also available on our website. Next slide, please. All right, the Education and Training Group is chaired by Bonnie Weddle, and after we wrapped up the education grant, the IMLS STEP grant, we moved into taking a look as part of that final activity there as what are our training options in education to try to sketch out where we're going in the next few years in terms of continuing to provide those valuable training opportunities for all the state archives on electronic records management and preservation. We also wrapped up a great series of webinars with Preservica. Those recordings are available, so you can always go back and listen to those recordings if you'd like. And the group is also hard at work at thinking about what our upcoming webinar topics are going to be in terms of electronic records in 2018. So we've got a couple in the hopper, and I would expect that very soon we will announce at least 2 or 3 upcoming webinars for the next few months. Next slide. So finally, our advocacy and outreach team that is co-chaired by Christine Garrett and Christian Skipper. This group is most commonly known for their work on 1010 or Electronic Records Day. They do a great job of promoting this, and that event has really grown over the years and gotten a lot of increased attention, and a lot of fun and educational resources coming out around that day that highlights the importance of electronic records preservation. But in addition to that work, this group supports the social media presence of SERI. If you are not following COSA on social media, I highly recommend that you do. Barbara and Ann and our advocacy and outreach team are doing a great job with our social media, and I kind of use the COSA social media accounts as my own personal BuzzFeed list of what's going on in other states and other associations. So it's a great opportunity to get kind of a landscape view of what your colleagues are doing and what our sister stakeholder organizations are doing, what's going on in digital preservation. So if you're not following us on social media, I highly recommend it. And I also would recommend that you should not be shy about recommending that you participate in one of the spotlight programs of the Advocacy and Outreach Subcommittee. This is a great way to highlight a program, activity, something that you're doing in electronic records management and preservation. It doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to have every issue solved, but it's a great way to share your work with your colleagues, and then we all benefit from learning a little bit more about that project or that initiative. So if you have something that you think might be a good spotlight, make sure you reach out to Christine and Christian. And I believe that's about all for the SERI update. I would ask everyone to stay involved in SERI, stay up to date on what's going on. Again, follow us on social media. There's a lot of great stuff going on and a lot more great things to come with the Access Grant, so keep an eye on SERI. And I believe I'm going to turn it back over to Tim.
Thank you, Sarah. Thanks, Sarah, and thanks to all of our presenters this afternoon. As I think you can see, we have a lot going on. All of our presenters today represent many of the members of the COSA board and other leaders within the COSA community. and I just really appreciate all their efforts and all their hard work. So with that, let's go right to questions and comments. Any questions or comments? If you
do have a question, if you would type it in the chat box, we can share it with Tim to share with the speakers.
Thank you, Barbara.
I'm not seeing anything.
Well, it was so informative. Well, if we don't have any questions or any comments, I would like to pass it back to Barbara with just another thank you, shout out to all of our presenters today, and thank you to you, the participants who took the time to be with us today. Barbara?
Thank you, Tim. I'd like to echo what Tim said. We really appreciated having a good overview of all the programs and services within COSA that are coming up in 2018. So if you do have any questions about anything you've heard today and you'd like for me to relay it to someone, just let me know. My email is the same as it was last year, bt@statearchivist.org. My new phone number I typed into the chat box, so please get in touch with me if you have any questions. It probably does seem like we're jumping the gun a little bit to talk about our August meeting, but I just wanted to make sure and get all this on your calendar when you're thinking about your plans for coming to the joint annual meeting with NAGARA and SAA. As Jim mentioned, we're trying the Archives on the Hill advocacy event on Tuesday, August 14th, and if you need to be involved in that, we'll be getting in touch with you. We'll contact people based on the members of the committees and subcommittees that we need to make contact with at DC. So you may be getting an invite to participate in this, or if not, you may be, if you don't have someone who is actually on one of the committees, but we think you would be a good buddy to go up on the Hill with some people who may or may not have done advocacy before, we'll be calling on you too. And then for our work session this year at the annual meeting, it's going to be a little bit different. We're going to spend a whole day at the National Archives, and we're going to have a great idea exchange with NARA staff through most of the day and wrap up with a work session at the end of the day. And we'll be sending more information out about that to you as we get the plans more firmed up. But we've been working with David Ferrio and some of his staff, particularly Meg Phillips, who's always very helpful to us, to figure out what are the things that State Archives and the National Archives need to talk together about most when we're in person together, and what are some of the things that we can work on remotely. So I think that's going to be a really interesting day for us, our great idea exchange day at the annual meeting, so we're looking forward to that. Of course, we'll have our silent auction, and we'll be sending out some requests for your local materials to come to DC so that we can auction off your material, auction off some of your local products or archives products to other people at the annual meeting. And we're still working on some of the scheduling based on when some SAA events are going to be, when the speakers are going to be, so we don't really have everything confirmed, but we do know that we are going to have a business meeting and an awards dinner at some point, and we'll let you know as soon as we know. And probably we should be able to pass that on, all the information, around March. I would say it would be probably firmed up, we're hoping. Okay, next slide, please, Becky. Thank you. As Shelley mentioned, we have a couple of webinars coming up. We have our 2 SHRAB town halls. One takes place in February, and we'll be having Dan Stokes from NHPRC give us some guidance about SHRAB and talk some about some of the new communications channels that we're working on with NARA and with NHPRC so that we're able to communicate better with our SHRABs and with the expectations of NHPRC for our SHRABs. In March, we have several leadership and management webinars coming up. The first one's going to be in March. I think you're going to be really pleased with the lineup of speakers we have. You can actually go ahead and go on to the COSA website and pre-register for all of those if you'd like to. And we're skipping we're skipping the leadership and management in April and going back to look at our advocacy committee. So Jim and Jody and other members of the committee will be providing some advocacy information for us at the April webinar. We do have a couple of events coming up. Endangered Data Week and Sunshine Week are coming up in the next couple of months. And we're always pretty active on social media for those events, and we hope that you will be as well and participate with us on those weeks. And COSA, of course, has its mid-year board meeting coming up in April, and we'll send you information when the board meets and let you know what the board decides about issues that are going on. The board also holds a partner briefing for its partners and collaborators that we host at the National Archives, so we'll be meeting with some of our partners from the Access Grant as well as other associations and other federal agencies while we're there. And next slide, Becky, please. Thank you. And always thank you to our sponsors and funders who are so instrumental in COSA's success and in cooperating with us: Ancestry, Family Search, APPX Software, Preservica, LibNova, Gaylord Archival, and Space Saver. And to echo something that Lizette said about Gaylord, we really appreciate the work that they have done in getting disaster recovery supplies to Puerto Rico. They've matched COSA's monetary donation and really managed a very difficult shipping process to get some initial supplies to Puerto Rico to support the work of the Heritage Emergency National Task Force. And Susan, I saw you said we're working on the Virgin Islands, and we're looking forward to ordering some supplies and sending some things down to the Virgin Islands as well. So we hope that, I don't know if it'll be any smoother than Puerto Rico shipping. We hope that it will be, but we really do want to thank Gaylord for going above and beyond and helping us. And all of you for your donations, for reaching out to help fund this new emergency fund so that we could help our sister institutions who had such trouble with the hurricane. We also want to thank our federal funders. NHPRC funded a couple of symposia this past year, and of course IMLS has been a steady funder for us for the past several years. As Sarah mentioned, we finished the education and training grant, and we just started, after that ended in March, we started a new grant in October to reach out to collaborators and partners to help work within state government to try to ensure digital preservation for records that are important to all of us. So thanks to our funders. And please do stay connected and informed with us. The office has changed addresses and telephone numbers, but everything else is the same. The website's the same. The PERTS portal is the same. We're looking at rebranding it and calling it the COSA Resource Center because we think PERTS is a little confusing to people, you know, in the general public. So we just want to make it a general resource center, and we're going to work on expanding it and making it more readily accessible. COSA's Twitter handle is the same. Please do, as Sarah said, participate with us on Twitter. It's a way to share information and know what's going on in other states. It's good to know that Sarah in North Carolina is using the COSA Twitter handle as a BuzzFeed list. I'm going to write that down somewhere. So thank you. And we're also on Facebook. So please just check any of our social media handles and keep in touch with us there. And we'd love to hear from you, and I'd also love to hear from you on my new COSA phone number or on my new COSA mailing address. And if we'll go to the next slide, we really appreciate you being with us here today. Our speakers were so efficient and covered everything so well that we're going to give you a few minutes of your day back. We're not going to keep you all the way until 4 o'clock or the top of the hour, depending on your time zone. So that really gives you an opportunity to give us some feedback today about our webinar and to give us some feedback on future topics or how you think the webinar went today or how you think we could improve anything that we're offering you through the webinars. Since this is the first webinar of the year, it's really important that we hear from you now so that we can tweak as we go along. We really would appreciate you taking the time to fill out the evaluation. It won't take very long, and it would mean a lot to all of us in the COSA office and in COSA administration. So please do take time to do that. Now, thank you all for attending today, and thanks particularly to our speakers for giving us a broad overview of all the activities within COSA, and please complete the evaluation. Thanks for joining us, and let me know if you have any questions anytime. Otherwise, goodbye, and we appreciate you coming today. Thank you.